Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Legal Mastermind podcast. Today, I have with me Ron Latz, who is the founder of LegalFenix, and Phoenix is spelled with an F in this, F-E-N-I-X. Ron, welcome to the podcast.
Eric, thanks so much. Appreciate you inviting me on. It's going to be a great discussion, and don't worry, I have the correct spelling locked down as well. I just have to set up the redirect. So if anyone does hit the F-E-N-I-X, you could also spell it Phoenix in like a day or two.
Great. All right. I like that. Doing the proofing of your own legal name so no one can make a mistake there. So, before we jump into things, this is going to be a legal marketing conversation, which I think is going to be really fun. This is a necessary function that every law firm has. Can you give the audience a little bit on your background and, where you are now as really a fractional CMO in the space?
Sure. About a dozen years ago or so, maybe even a little bit more at this point, I started off with Thomson Reuters within their legal division, working for FindLaw. That's how I got into the legal space. And I was a client development consultant. I was a sales rep, an account executive, and that's where I was selling all of these marketing and advertising services and products to lawyers. And then once I had left FindLaw, I went on to another predominantly sales-driven role, but a year or two even after my departure, I still had some of my flagship clients come out and reach out to me and say, hey, Ron, you're gone. Like, do I renew? Do I buy this product? Should I try this out? Should I switch agencies or vendors? And that was probably 7 or 8 years ago at this point. So I spun up my LLC and I started taking on just select consulting clients. And then over the next handful of years or so, I had joined a boutique legal marketing agency, Mockingbird Marketing, where I was pretty much responsible for rebuilding their customer success, sales, and their digital strategist function. So I was overseeing, the account manager role, the digital strategists who were the subject matter experts, given their individual expertise and channel specialty, and then handling, what was predominantly an inbound sales function as well. And from that point, I had, always had the other business on the side, working with, firms that were different ideal client profiles, given what I was doing. And I just got the itch again, right? I wanted more of that autonomy, more ownership, and just build my own thing. So I had gone back out. I rebranded, renamed the entire organization. I publicly announced that about 5 or 6 weeks ago, maybe a little bit longer at this point. And that's now where I am, offering fully fractional CMO services. But on the front end, I do a lot of consulting and advisory work. There's some firms that might not be ready. They just put up their shingle, or they already have resources in place, but they want to have someone that's got, 15 years of experience underneath their belt to help them navigate some of the complexities or the vendor landscape. So they bring me on to kind of help with those efforts. So that's what I've been doing now for the past 6 to 9 months.
Yeah, and you and I have a similar path. I worked for FindLaw as well, as in that same position. And the one thing that I think has changed for both of us since that initial introduction to legal marketing is there's just so many more options. And I don't just mean like more people doing the same thing, but I mean more places where you can market your law firm. Social media, when I started, wasn't even a thing back then. And now you've got social media, you've got digital TV, and all those other things. So I think what you do is really necessary now, because if you've had experience with a lot of different companies and you talk to a lot of different law firms in different practice areas in different parts of the country, so you're able to kind of accumulate, this hive mentality of things that you've seen work, and maybe even vendors who you trust more. I'd like to kind of start at the beginning, and if you could frame things in, because I really feel like there's 2 different types of law firms out there. We'll just call it, small firm, medium firm. So the small and medium are people who do their own marketing, or they're going to outsource their marketing. Big firm, let's just say those are people who have in-house marketing teams, And I think it's a really important thing, because on a small firm, it would just use, somebody who might be 1 or 2 partners. They have a marketing budget, but every single dime matters to them. They need to create business right away. They can't spend, tens of thousands of dollars over 6, to 8 months with nothing coming in. And then I would consider, say, the medium size, where these are people who have a lot of referrals coming in. They're established, they're doing some marketing, some of it's efficient, some of it's not working at all, and they just don't know. So I'd appreciate it if you would like kind of frame it to both audiences. I think we get both of those audiences here, and your insights could be very valuable. So I will shut up now and let you kind of chat about what the first step is in working with a law firm, whether it be that small or medium size, is what you're looking to find out and put in place.
Yeah, we can throw out some hypotheticals here. If you're just let's just say you're a solo attorney, you just put up your shingle, right? You're probably going to be handling the majority of those efforts, whether it's speaking to agencies, figuring out what your strategy is going to be. Maybe you have a VA that you can offload some of the administrative tasks and burdens to. But for the most part, the challenging instance here is that you don't really know what you don't know, right? You're taking the vendors and the marketing agency's word pretty much as gospel. They are the subject matter experts, so you're going to lean on their advice and recommendations to help them put you in a better position to achieve your goals. It depends upon like how much time you actually have, right? To go out, and whether it's a traditional type of marketing effort, normal business development, shaking hands, going to networking events, nurturing, having networking phone calls, going to conferences, joining mastermind groups so that you can build up that referral book of business and leverage the profit and the revenue that you've generated from that to reinvest into maybe an outsourced marketing solution, right? That's going to be an option. I think if you're limited by budget, doing those types of grassroots marketing is where your time is best spent. Having that newsletter, making sure that you're staying top of mind with your current and previous clients, ensuring that your service professional network is constantly, like, you have to maintain top of mindness with them, unless they're probably going to forget about you, right? That's just the nature of the business. If someone's going to recommend a client, they probably give them 2 or 3 names. And if you're one of them, like, you want to make sure that you've got your best foot forward in order to kind of capture that lead. Moving into a more sophisticated firm, maybe the medium size, like, the options really do open up. And I think the firms that I work with that have the most success really do have a hybrid type of approach. They've got someone internally that can help kind of keep vendors accountable, keep the lines of communication open with them, kind of pester the firm when they need to get approvals on things like design or website content, so that the agency can do the job that they were hired to do. In other instances, maybe you've joined a mastermind or you've got a coach to bring you, a little bit further along in that life cycle to bring you to the next level, right? You might need to hire additional attorneys because now through the marketing, right, you've got bandwidth constraints. You're bringing in all these leads. You got to be able to continue to service those prospects and ensure that you're giving them a good client experience. So depending upon where you are, what the bandwidth of those individual resources continues to be, what your budget is, right? There's a lot of different ways that you can have this hybrid type of approach where you're working with a consultant, you've got an agency or a vendor handling some of your marketing, and then even an internal resource that can keep the ball rolling and ensure that the lines of communication amongst all parties is always kept open.
Yeah, you mentioned one thing that I think is a great idea, which is having an internal marketing person. And I'd love to hear your advice on, if someone's looking to hire someone internally, what skill set do they want to look for? Because marketing these days, as I mentioned before, there's so many different avenues. Do you want someone who's a good copywriter? Do you want someone who has good acumen with Google Analytics? What would you say is a skill set to be on the lookout for if you're going to have somebody internally to deal with the other vendors that you might be outsourcing?
Yeah, if we keep going with this hypothetical scenario, on the smaller side of the house, you're probably going to need someone that's got more of a generalist type of skill base, because you need them to do a lot of different things, right? You need them to talk to your vendors. You might need them to, post on social media on your behalf, or maybe even make some, quick and dirty website updates like to bio pages or practice area pages. The trouble that those firms kind of run into is that they're literally adding every single marketing responsibility to that job requisition. It's like you look at it, they're the marketing manager, the coordinator, the social media manager and coordinator. You want them to do SEO, hosting and maintenance, reach out to do PR. It's like they're leading communications. There's just only so many hours in the day, and you don't want to set those individuals up to fail. So that's a delicate balance in the beginning when you're going from generalist. And now as you continue to expand, maybe you do need more of a specialist because you've allocated and invested some dollars towards specific channels. And maybe that is, you need someone that's got more copywriting skills or someone that has been in the SEO space because you want to bring that function in-house, right? Depending upon your stage of growth and where you are, those individual resources are going to have to carry different responsibilities in order to bring you to that next level.
So if we could step forward to maybe like paid campaigns, and when I say paid, that could be SEO, it could be AdWords, it could be social media. What type of advice do you give law firms? Like I said, there's the law firm that says, hey, I know I'm at a place where I need to grow. I've got a little bit of a budget. What's your advice as to, here's my list in order? And the way I look at it is like, you want to use that budget very selectly in the beginning because it's got to have the best chance to bring in new clients. And then you can start expanding into other areas, a little bit more branding, other things that might not be as consistent as another form. So what type of advice do you give a law firm when they're getting ready to spend money on SEO or paid campaigns?
First of all, I want to understand what the overall goals and objectives are for the firm at a base level. We've already, which I can't believe, we've already finished the first half of the year. So if everyone is looking back at the previous 6 months, what goals did we hit? What goals did we miss and fall short on? And what are the other things that we need to potentially do in the second half to get to that revenue number or that location expansion or adding additional attorneys or maybe moving to a new geo, right? Like you have to understand what is it that we are setting out to achieve in order to go and put the pieces in place to get that outcome. I think that there's also a disservice when you're, okay, I'm ready to invest some dollars, right? And now you have these conversations with agencies. One of the first steps that's typically missed that sets firms up and the agency up for failure is that you are not defining what success means for both sides, right? If the agency believes that they are responsible for producing X amount of pages of content and capturing X amount of backlinks and maybe writing X or Y amount of blogs, if they hit those criteria and check off all those boxes, they might deem that as a successful campaign. Whereas if the law firm is looking more for a financial or revenue-based outcome, they're looking for signups and retainers and case volume benchmarks to increase or lowering of acquisition costs, right? You're going to look at the end of 3 or 6 months and there's going to be a disconnect. Both sides are going to likely be frustrated or disappointed because one believes they're doing a great job and the other thinks that they're entirely missing the mark. So even before you outlay and put those chips into play, I think you've got to, you got to come prepared to that vendor conversation, knowing what your goals and objectives are. And then you have to be prepared to tell the agency what you believe and how you define success. Then it is incumbent upon the agency to manage or reset those expectations, because admittedly, some of the law firm's expectations are unrealistic, right? So we need to make sure that we're having those conversations at the forefront so that when we're halfway through a relationship or through the term of an agreement, we're just not pointing fingers at each side, blaming each other, because then no one is going to be successful. So once you get past that point, again, now we've got to look at other factors. If you've got X amount of dollars that you can put into a particular channel, okay, let's think again about the goal. If we've got short-term goals and we need to start generating revenue in the short term almost immediately, we're going to consider more of the paid ad channels or paid search through Google Ads or Microsoft Bing in order to start generating some of that traction up front. If you've got the investment dollars and you can make more of a long-term investment and you don't need to get the revenue into the door today, we can consider a more organic or SEO type of investment. So we can build that foundation and then start growing out from, maybe one location to another city or maybe an entire county, and so on and so forth. So you've got to balance all of these things when you're having these conversations with the vendors. So they've got the context, they know the target they're trying to hit. They can then set the proper expectations with you, and then a decision can be made about whether or not a partnership makes sense for both parties.
Yeah, and those are all great points. And one thing I've seen firsthand is most law firms, and this is just anecdotal, most law firms don't do an amazing job of tracking, meaning they're busy doing legal things, the stuff that they want to do, and they might not necessarily know where these leads are coming from. How is that something that you have advice on, as far as, I always tell people, look, if you're spending money on something, if it's working, you need to know it. If it's not working, you need to know that too. Are there certain tools out there or advice, or how do you work with a law firm to make sure that they're tracking those marketing dollars, or just any case that comes in, whether that be a referral or a lead through a Google ad?
Sure, I'll share them. I just want everybody to know, go on record, that no one is paying me to say these things. So these products are just products that I also believe in, but then my clients use as well. So, when you're looking at tracking all of your leads and where that revenue is coming, I do think that it makes sense, in order for any firm that is putting any amount of dollars into their marketing, to have some sort of dynamic call tracking software on their website, right? The majority of my clients use CallRail. You can use call tracking metrics or what converts. There's other options out there, but what this allows you to do is at least get a better idea as to where some of these individuals might be coming from, like what is capturing the demand, essentially. Many clients will then try to push that data into a front-end lead intake management software, right? A lot of them have legal focus, like Lawmatics. They'll have Clio Grow. You might have Lead Docket. Some non-legal players work with a lot of firms that also are leveraging HubSpot because of its flexibility. But essentially what they're able to do is then input some automation, so that when individual potential new clients are calling that tracking phone number, that contact record is automatically created in the tool or in that system. So intake can really focus on servicing that client, getting all the case criteria and details, and scheduling a consult, because at the end of the day, we want to stop their shopping experience and get them through the door to speak with someone at our firm. So, there's many different ways that you can do that. You can then take that lead intake management software and push that data into your case management software to get full life cycle visibility into where these people are coming from, what captured the demand versus what created the demand. But I think at a basic setup there, if you just have call tracking in place, right, you can cross-reference that with those clients that have been retained, so you can know which channels are likely performing the best for you, and then make more data-based decisions instead of just relying on your gut.
Yeah, and I always tell a law firm, it's you can track it in reverse, meaning if you just look at your signed cases, if you're doing robust tracking, you can find out where those came from. It's like, oh, that was referral, that was a referral. Oh, that came in from organic. I don't recognize it. That could have been a Google local, or it could have been an organic. And one step beyond that is, I really say, you want to track every lead that you wanted, or if it at least had solid legal intent. So someone got into a car accident, they had minor injuries, they didn't go to the hospital. It's not a case that you would take, but that was the exact type of search that you wanted. That's, in my mind, a success. I know it's not $1 million case. You're probably not going to sign them up, but it was very, very close. And knowing when something like that is working means that you're around the target. It wasn't a bullseye, but it was very, very close. So it becomes really important. I understand that these are all extra things that you have to dedicate time to or hire a person to help with, but without understanding what's working, you have no way to manipulate bigger growth, because you're just kind of shooting in the dark.
I couldn't agree more. This has to be put into place before you start putting significant dollars into any of these channels, because if not, and intake is not a well-oiled machine, or even worse, if the attorneys at the firm don't have capacity or bandwidth, and then you go out because you think you have a lead problem and you want to spend $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 more on Google Ads, and then you turn those on and the agency gets those going, the only thing you're doing is investing in poor first impressions at scale. Because the customer experience that they're going to have, because intake can't handle it, or there's not overflow or after hours coverage, these individuals, not only are they going to go and call the firms next door, but you might rub some people the wrong way and inadvertently start sending people to leave you those bad reviews. They didn't answer my call. They didn't return my phone call. No one got back to me. I left a voicemail. Firms are like, oh, they'll call me back. No, they're not. They're not going to call you back. They went and they picked up the phone and they talked to the person and likely retained the first firm that had a lawyer talk to them, right? So like you see it in like the Clio Trends report constantly. And I'm hoping that they get more updated data on this. I forget what year, but they talked about how poor response rates were for lawyers and how many days individuals had to wait before they even got a call back, right? Like this is table stakes type of stuff. And there's such an advantage to those fast movers who really do move their prospects through their funnel quickly. I mean, that's the speed to lead is going to win the game there.
Yeah, I'm actually amazed even at hyper successful firms. I mean, firms that, do tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in, verdicts and settlements. When I call their law office, I either get put on hold or there's some crazy chain of events that happens and I've got to push 2 or 3 numbers before I get somewhere. And I understand it. I understand some of these larger firms, you can't have a whole bank of humans to answer every call. But if you think that every 100th call could be your biggest case of the year, or have an enormous value to it, and you're not treating it that way, you could lose it. So again, going back to the smaller, medium-sized firm, what do you suggest as far as intake? Do you suggest third party? You mentioned before after hours calls. Good calls come at all times of day. Not if you've got someone who has an injury and they're calling on behalf of their wife and they have a 9 to 5, you're not going to get that call at 2 p.m. You're probably going to get it at 7 p.m. So what advice do you have on intake? So now we've already talked about generating leads. Now you've got to handle those properly.
Yeah, I mean, if the financials allow it, I do think if you can, best case is you have it in-house. Right? Because that person is completely dedicated to you. You know that they're not likely going to mispronounce your name. They know the practice area and the cases that you're willing to take. There's a lot of opportunity for training and mentoring and ensuring that they're doing a good job. That's why I'm always a proponent of call recording, so you can audit the calls, audit their performance, identify areas needed for improvement. I know that that is not possible for every single law firm. So I believe that the next best is going to be a dedicated VA, where again, they're going to be the ones that you might not get them in the middle of the day, but if you can get them for your after hours and weekend coverage, that's great. That's another instance where they don't have 15, 20, 30 other firms that they're answering the phone for. They don't have to monitor a handful of different scripts or remember which practice area or areas that you serve, right? Having them dedicated to you, I think, is going to put you in a better position to ensure a smoother customer experience. Now, there are other great, like I have a ton of clients that also use outfits like Smith AI, right? The only, I wouldn't even say it's a downside, but you just have to know when you are working within an outfit like that, you've got to put the time and effort into training those individuals multiple times. Because unfortunately, in those roles, churn, just like at a law firm or just like at your marketing agency, is inevitable. So if you had a rock star and then now you've got more of a B or C player, you've got to put the hours in to coach them to get them up and running so that they're not dropping the ball. Because that 1 of 100, that could be a massive case. Like you don't want to miss that opportunity. So ultimately, at the end of the day, if you've got someone in-house or dedicated, that's always my recommendation. If not, there are other solutions where you can fill the gaps just to make sure that you're not missing that 7 p.m. call, which could be a monster.
When you say a VA, do you mean, one of these third-party companies that has, an intake center, or do you mean your own, a couple of VAs that are outsourced as a one-on-one relationship?
Yeah, the latter, not necessarily a call center. I mean, those options do exist. Again, very similar. It's going to be more of a round robin approach. You might have someone that's dedicated, but you could be one of a dozen or 2 dozen different firms that they're responsible for answering the phone for. So I think when you have the VA, and again, you got to play the time zone game here to ensure that they are available. But I do think that there's options out there right now offshore that allow you to fill those gaps so that you're not missing that Saturday call in the middle of the afternoon because you're out with your family. Someone else is out there stopping the shopping experience, scheduling that consult while you're not available, so they just don't go back to Google and find the next firm that answers their ring.
Well, how much emphasis do you put on social media for a law firm? And I'll talk about both sides of the coin. There's the social media, which is like your personal branding that you update and, here's our party and here's a great review we got. And then social media advertising, we're actually paying to advertise on it. How much emphasis do you put at this point on a law firm embracing that?
Well, I'm a huge proponent of the personal branding side of the house, just because that's literally what I do to create demand, for my services. I try to post almost daily on LinkedIn. And when I look at the success of that, or how I define success of that, I don't look at it as a lead gen type of program. I do it to continue to develop my own thoughts and share ideas and test them with the market, develop thought leadership, show my expertise in this area of subject matter, nurture relationships, learn new things, rekindle relationships, just like us or with other organizations where I might get speaking opportunities to go on a podcast, but I'm not out there waiting for the DM every single day to say, hey, I want to work with you. Does it happen as a byproduct of those efforts? On occasion, but that's not what I'm relying on every single month to continue to drive revenue. I do think that social advertising does have its place. Depending upon the practice area, there's a couple of different approaches that I would take. I'm a big proponent of leveraging paid distribution to put a very high value asset in front of the right individuals. So for example, within employment law, that's a very heavy researched prospect, right? They're not really sure if it was discrimination. They don't know if they have a case, right? So putting the top 10 things that you should consider if you believe that you are a victim of any sort of discrimination, and then targeting, on a platform like LinkedIn by job title, just to get that guide or that white paper or infographic in front of them, I think could be incredibly successful. You could do that in other practice areas as well, family law, estate planning, just because the life cycle or the research phase is a little bit longer. Outside of those two arenas, I do look at it, a little bit differently than you would your normal paid search, just because typically what you're trying to do on a social program, paid, is to create awareness, drive engagement, and then go for the conversion. So you need that ad to pretty much show up 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 times before someone has finally got that know, like, and trust to take the next step to click on the link or download your resource or subscribe, whatever it is, the conversion action that you're looking for them to take at the bottom end of the funnel.
Yeah, I think everything you said makes perfect sense. And I always say, whether it's the personal branding or you're running ads, you as long as it's a high quality, you want to be proud of what it is. I see some social media things that I'm like, you wouldn't post that on your personal one,
Right.
let alone this is how someone's going to judge you. And I learned a lesson last year because we did a ton of focus groups. And just because I personally would never go to Facebook or Instagram to find a service, whether that be a dentist or a lawyer, I heard time and time again in these focus groups, this generation behind me, they will. And it was just such a light bulb moment. I'm like, oh my God, someone's like, I need, not that they would go on a Google search and cite personal injury lawyer, but they'll find you and then they'll go check your social media. And if you don't have something that you're proud of that represents you really well, you could have just lost that potential case because you didn't speak to that person. I use the analogy all the time, as a lawyer, you'd never have, a 25-year-old couch with holes in it, and a ratty rug and a dirty table. When someone comes into your office, that's what your social media, it needs to be pristine. It needs to really represent you. So I wanted to shift gears just to, because there's been so many changes just in the last couple of years, but what do you see coming down the pike now? What do you think's next? What are you talking to your law firms about, to either be ready for or starting to prep them for right now, as far as technology and other ways to drive business?
Well, specifically with Google, the hottest topics right now are LSAs being incorporated into the local pack. Before that, it was the fact that you could message multiple lawyers after you submitted your initial inquiry. And then the auto enrolling everybody into the branded LSA ruffled a bunch of feathers there, which I get. So that's been a topic of discussion. I think around
Can you, just before you go, can you explain the LSA? Because I think most people now are familiar with the LSAs being, the top 3 boxes, but this brand new program, fairly new program that Google has where that LSA is incorporated into the maps. I think that's very timely for right now.
Yeah, that is literally within the past couple of days here. So after they announced the fact that they were going to start doing branded LSAs, they also announced that they are going to be adding one of the LSA ad units into the map pack. Right now, we've seen other paid search Google Ads units in the map pack already, but I think this is just another opportunity where Google, who is in the business of maximizing revenue per impression, to find another little sliver of space to add a unit that someone would have to pay for. Now, the only way that you could get rid of it is if you turn your LSA ads completely off, right? Kind of a crummy thing, right? It's like you're not even giving me the option not to play in that space where you could turn branded off if you wanted to, right? And then A/B test it. I turn them on. How does that impact my unit economics? I turn it off. How does that impact my economics? Like, what is the shift in my acquisition costs here, or my pay per lead? With Maps, they don't even give you that option. So I think, that's just like, you've got loyal advertisers spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on these units. LSA platform, the UI is terrible to begin with, but the lack of data that they share with you, like, you can't really make decisions based off of data, because the only lever you can really pull is give Google more money by increasing my average cost I'm willing to pay per lead, or give Google more money, increase my budget. So, right now it's just, I haven't seen them in the wild yet. It's that fresh. So we will see. So right now we're just going to see what's going to happen and see if we get more action, I guess, if you will, from the map pack.
Yeah, and my guess is they will. We do heat map tests all the time, and when the maps show up in a Google search, they get interacted with more than anything else. They take up a bigger footprint. They're in color. They include your reviews. Everything about them is more attractive. They show where your location is compared to where the searcher is. So everything about them is more attractive. We've seen anywhere from 40 to 60% of the clicks when LSAs, PPC, maps, and organic show up. 40 to 60% of the clicks will go to maps. So to your point, these things could get hammered. People could be getting hit with a lot of charges that they shouldn't be. So my guess is there will be a lot of pushback on that from the LSA people, but Google.
Well, they just also announced that they're automating the credit process, the dispute process. They're taking the human element out of that now, because the amount of disputes from law firms that were getting leads that were out of the practice area or out of their geo, like, there are firms that were getting thousands of dollars in disputes credited back to their account. Now, the lag that took, like, it was taking 60, 90 plus days for those funds to come back. But even still, they're trying to optimize it, make it as efficient as possible. Throw another ad unit, make more ad dollars, great. And now we're just going to automate the credit process for disputes. No labor cost there. More shareholder value.
Yeah, I have a client I've been working with on that, and he's told me, he'll get his dispute back in 4 seconds. So I was trying to see if there's a way to game the system. Like, is there a keyword that you can use in your dispute that will give you a higher percentage chance? But he says it's hit and miss. Some of them they just credit back right away, and others that are just complete garbage. No one looking for his services, and they still leave that charge on there.
Yeah. The other thing.
So I interrupted you. You had mentioned that the LSAs in the maps, but you were also talking about some of the other trends that you see, and I wanted to make sure the audience got the benefit of some of this foresight that you have.
Well, I was getting, you then talked about how engaging it was within the map pack. What I like the best part of so before they renamed it to AI overviews and people were part of the search generative experience or search labs, like, experiment is the beta version of it. I thought that one of the most useful additions to the map pack. Not only did they branch it out from a 3, then they had a 5, they were testing like 7+ packs, you know, back to 10 packs. But when you interacted with that GBP pin within the pack and clicked it, it would open up like the firm's knowledge panel on the side. And then you could see their social profiles, or you could see like their GBP posts, or like get links to other information. Like I thought that as a user of search, seeing that information where I don't have to click into and open up, you know, 6 tabs for different websites, like I thought that was cool. I literally haven't seen it like in the past 4 to 5 weeks since I've been searching. But, you know, the AI overview coming into play, which is continuing to increase zero-click results, meaning Google is scraping or leveraging the responses to the queries or questions that users are putting into the search engine directly on the search engine results page. Now, I think that's great from a branding perspective. They're trying to find more information and cite these resources, which some of them are correct, some of them are completely inaccurate, but another conversation for another time, right? Like if you continue to see that and you have a lot of content, you have a content heavy website, right? You might see some decreases in the overall traffic to your website because now they don't have to click to your website anymore. So, you know, you should be doing with any agency, if you have an SEO investment or retainer on the table, refreshing that content, going back to it and ensuring that the ones that don't get any visibility or don't get any conversions, like, do we need to rewrite it? Do we need to refresh it? Or we need to redirect it? Like, what are you going to do? And that's an exercise that you bring to your SEO agency, and they should be doing that frequently enough so that you can look at the results, make your tweaks, go back, see what levers you pulled, what did it do? And if you want to do more of that, now you can take those lessons learned and apply that to some of the other pages. But I think AI overviews is still going to be a big wait and see in legal, just because it's, you know, part of that your money, your life category. Google's got to be really careful with not giving like financial, medical, or legal advice. So like that's another delicate balance that we have to sit back and see how it's going to hit the industry. But, you know, those are the questions that many people are continuing to ask on these calls outside of the traditional, you know, normal questions about what do I do here? Or do I buy this or that profile that have been coming across my desk pretty frequently?
Yeah, well, the one thing that remains true is there's a lot of options and a lot of confusions out there that makes a person like you very valuable, I think, to a law firm. So Ron, if someone wants to chat with you, what's the best place for them to find you? And, you know, if you've got anything, you will obviously include it in the show notes, but any other ways to either see you if there's conferences coming up that you're going to or the like.
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is going to be the best place to find me. Feel free to just DM me, or you could just go to the profile and follow if you're looking for any legal marketing tips or insights and tricks, if you will. Other than that, LegalFenix.com, FENIX, for the time being. But you can check out the website, and my phone number's out there somewhere. Like I'm old. Like you ever want to call and just talk on the phone? Like I do that stuff too. So feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to talk shop.
Great. Ron, really appreciate your time here. And I think anybody who's got any marketing questions at all would learn something by scheduling with you. So thanks again.
Appreciate it, Eric. Thanks so much. It was a blast.